Have you ever wondered what it means to fall asleep while praying? Is it a sign of disrespect to God, or could it actually be a profound spiritual practice? Today, we're going to explore a beautiful teaching from John Paul II about the sacred connection between prayer and sleep, and how this understanding can transform your spiritual life, bring unexpected financial wisdom, and improve your overall health. Have you noticed how our modern world seems obsessed with productivity, always pushing us to do more, achieve more, and stay awake longer? We often feel guilty when we drift off during prayer, as if we've somehow failed in our devotion. But what if I told you that John Paul II had a completely different perspective on this experience? Let me share a story with you. Maria was a hard-working grandmother of 4 who dedicated her life to her family and faith. Despite her exhaustion at the end of each day, she would kneel beside her bed to pray her rosary. Night after night, she would wake up hours later, still clutching, her beads having fallen asleep mid-prayer. This filled her with shame and disappointment. How could I be so disrespectful, she would ask herself, believing her sleepiness was a sign of spiritual weakness. One Sunday after Mass, a visiting priest shared an anecdote about John Paul II. The Pope had once been asked about falling asleep during prayer, and his response was unexpected and profound. Falling asleep in the arms of God is one of the most beautiful ways to rest, he had said. When a child falls asleep in their father's arms, is this not a sign of perfect trust? These words struck Maria deeply, completely changing her understanding of her nighttime prayers. The connection between prayer and sleep runs deep in our spiritual tradition. When we examine the Psalms, we find beautiful passages like, "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." This verse reminds us that surrendering to sleep while in communion with God is not a failure. It's an act of profound trust. I'd love to hear from you about your own experiences with prayer. Do you ever find yourself drifting off while praying? Where are you watching this video from? Take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming videos on spiritual wisdom that can transform your daily life. Your comments help us create content that speaks directly to your spiritual journey. John Paul II understood something fundamental about human nature and spirituality that many of us overlook. When we pray until we fall asleep, we are essentially placing ourselves completely in God's hands. It's the ultimate act of surrender. Imagine for a moment what it means to trust someone so deeply that you can peacefully drift into unconsciousness in their presence. This is precisely what happens when we transition from prayer to sleep. The Pope, who was known for his rigorous prayer life, often spoke about how prayer should permeate every aspect of our existence. Prayer and life cannot be separated, he would say. By allowing our prayers to accompany us into sleep, we are essentially maintaining that connection with the divine, even as our conscious mind rests. This understanding transforms not just our spiritual practice, but offers wisdom that extends to other areas of our lives. Consider how this principle applies to our relationship with money and material possessions. Many people lie awake at night, anxious about financial concerns, unable to surrender their worries and rest peacefully. John Paul II's teaching invites us to approach our material needs with the same trust we bring to our spiritual life. When we truly trust in divine providence, we can fall asleep to our anxieties about tomorrow's bread. This doesn't mean we should be irresponsible with our resources. Rather, it suggests that after we've done our part, working diligently, saving prudently, and giving generously, we can release our grip on worry and rest in the knowledge that we are cared for. There's a beautiful harmony in this approach. By releasing our desperate clutching at financial security, we often find ourselves making wiser, more balanced decisions. We become less likely to chase get-rich-quick schemes or make impulsive purchases. driven by fear or greed. Instead, we develop patience and discernment, qualities that lead naturally to greater financial stability. This principle extends to our physical and mental health as well. Medical research consistently shows that worry and anxiety significantly impact our ability to sleep well, which in turn affects every aspect of our well-being. By learning to pray until we sleep, we're actually engaging in a practice that can lower blood pressure, reduce stress hormones, and improve immune function. The act of surrendering our concerns, whether spiritual, financial, or health-related, before sleep has profound physiological benefits. It signals to our nervous system that it's safe to rest and recover. John Paul II, who faced serious health challenges throughout his later years, demonstrated remarkable peace despite his physical suffering. He understood that true wellness encompasses the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. There's a story told about the Pope during his final illness. A visitor noticed how, despite his obvious pain and difficulty speaking, he appeared peaceful, often closing his eyes in what seemed like brief moments of prayer throughout their conversation. When asked about this practice, his response was illuminating. "I am simply returning to the source of all strength." He had developed the ability to slip into prayer at any moment, finding refreshment and renewal even amidst suffering. This practice of transitioning seamlessly between wakefulness and prayer, between prayer and sleep, cultivates a particular quality of attention that neurologists now recognize as highly beneficial for brain health. It's a form of mindfulness that doesn't require special techniques or training. It flows naturally from a life grounded in spiritual practice. As we explore this teaching further, we'll discover how John Paul II's wisdom about prayer and sleep reveals surprising insights about living a balanced life in all dimensions, spiritual, financial, and physical. We'll learn practical ways to incorporate this understanding into our daily routines and see how this simple shift in perspective can truly change everything. The Pope once said, "The Rosary is my favorite prayer." Many who pray the Rosary report that its gentle rhythm naturally lulls them into a state of peaceful contemplation that can easily transition into sleep. Rather than seeing this as a failure, John Paul II would view it as the prayer achieving its purpose, bringing us into such intimate communion with God that we can rest completely in divine presence. Imagine ending each day not with the jarring halt of an electronic device being turned off, but with the gentle transition from conscious prayer into the embrace of sleep. This is not just spiritually enriching, but establishes a pattern of trust that can transform how we approach every aspect of our lives. This transition from prayer to sleep reveals something profound about our relationship with time and attention. In our modern world, we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us that time is money, that every moment must be productive, that falling asleep is somehow wasting time. But John Paul II offers us a radically different perspective. Consider how the Pope structured his own days. Despite his immense responsibilities leading the global church, meeting with world leaders, and writing profound theological works, he maintained a discipline of prayer that anchored his life. His personal secretary once revealed that the Pope would often be found in his chapel late at night, sometimes kneeling in prayer, other times having dozed off while still in an attitude of devotion. Rather than seeing these moments as failures, the Pope's staff recognized them as beautiful expressions of his complete trust in God. This approach to prayer and sleep has remarkable parallels to how we might approach our financial lives. Just as we can release ourselves into sleep while praying, trusting that God watches over us even in our unconsciousness, we can approach our material needs with a similar attitude of trusting surrender after responsible action. Many financial advisors today emphasize the importance of passive income, money that works for you while you sleep. There's wisdom in this concept when understood through a spiritual lens. After we've done our part, working diligently, saving prudently, investing wisely, we can release our anxious grip on outcomes and trust that proper stewardship bears fruit even when we're not actively controlling everything. John Paul II spoke often about the dignity of work and the proper relationship to material goods. The essential meaning of capital in economic theory, he wrote, is the collection of means of production that are the result of human labor. This perspective reminds us that true wealth comes not from anxious accumulation, but from meaningful labor that continues to bear fruit beyond our immediate efforts. Think about how transformative this understanding can be for those who lie awake, worrying about bills, retirement, or providing for their families. By embracing the spiritual practice of surrendering to prayer and sleep, we can cultivate a healthier relationship with both our spiritual and financial lives. We work diligently during our waking hours, then release our concerns into God's hands as we rest. This balanced approach also has profound implications for our physical and mental health. Medical research has established clear connections between quality sleep and almost every aspect of well-being, from immune function to cognitive performance, from emotional regulation to cardiovascular health. By embracing John Paul II's wisdom about the sacredness of falling asleep in prayer, we're actually aligning ourselves with what medical science now confirms is essential for health. The practice of transitioning from prayer to sleep also helps to counteract one of the most damaging aspects of modern life: the constant state of hyperarousal many people experience. Our nervous systems were never designed to remain in high alert for extended periods, yet many of us live with chronically elevated stress hormones due to constant stimulation and worry. The gentle rhythm of evening prayer, followed by surrender to sleep, helps reset our nervous systems to their natural state of balance. There's a beautiful story about a monastery where John Paul II once stayed before becoming pope. The monks noticed that he had a practice of writing down his concerns on a small piece of paper before evening prayers. He would place this paper on the altar during his devotions and then leave it there as he went to sleep. When asked about this habit, he explained, "I give these concerns to God for the night shift. There's no need for both of us to stay awake." Isn't there profound wisdom in this approach? Imagine the freedom that comes from literally handing over your concerns, whether spiritual questions, financial worries, or health issues, before you sleep, trusting that divine wisdom is at work even as you rest. This isn't magical thinking. It's a practical expression of faith that acknowledges both human responsibility and divine providence. This practice can be especially helpful for older adults who often experience changes in sleep patterns as they age. Instead of fighting against these natural shifts or resorting immediately to medication, embracing a more contemplative approach to the transition between wakefulness and sleep can transform what might otherwise be frustrating insomnia into sacred time for prayer and spiritual connection. John Paul II himself modeled this approach throughout his pontificate, particularly in his later years when he struggled with Parkinson's disease and other health challenges. Visitors often noted how he maintained a remarkable serenity. Despite his obvious physical discomfort, part of his secret was this lifelong practice of blending prayer with rest, seeing both as sacred aspects of his relationship with God. There's a profound lesson here for how we approach aging and health challenges. Rather than seeing physical limitations as obstacles to spiritual practice, we can, like John Paul II, discover how these very challenges invite us into deeper surrender and trust. When we can no longer maintain the active pace of our younger years, we're invited into a more contemplative mode of being that naturally aligns with the wisdom of praying until we sleep. This brings us to another dimension of John Paul II's teaching that's often overlooked. The Pope frequently spoke about the importance of the gift of self as the path to true fulfillment. This self-giving love is exemplified in Christ, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself. There's a striking parallel between this kenotic self-emptying and the act of surrendering to sleep while in prayer. When we allow ourselves to drift from conscious prayer into sleep, we're practicing a kind of self-emptying, releasing our need for control and allowing ourselves to be held in a larger reality. This practice cultivates humility, the recognition that the world continues quite well without our conscious management. This humility, in turn, creates the foundation for wiser financial decisions, as we're less likely to be driven by ego, fear, or the need to prove ourselves through acquisition or display. Consider how many poor financial choices stem from the inability to surrender control, from the anxious need to manipulate outcomes, or from the fear of not having enough. By practicing daily surrender in prayer before sleep, we gradually become more comfortable with trustful release in other areas of life, including our approach to material resources. John Paul II understood that true security comes not from accumulation, but from proper relationship. Relationship with God, with others, and with the material world. When we fall asleep while praying, we're embodying this truth, demonstrating that our ultimate security rests not in our own vigilance, but in being held within a loving divine presence. This understanding has particular relevance for retirement planning. Many approach their later years with anxiety, wondering if they've saved enough, if their needs will be met. While prudent preparation is certainly wise, John Paul II's teaching reminds us that there comes a point when we must release our anxious grip and trust. Just as we surrender to sleep each night, there's a larger surrender that comes with aging, and this surrender can be embraced as a spiritual practice rather than resisted as a threat. The Pope himself demonstrated this truth dramatically in his final years. As his physical abilities declined, he didn't cling desperately to the appearance of strength or hide his vulnerabilities. Instead, he allowed the world to witness his frailty, transforming his suffering into a powerful testimony to the dignity of human life at every stage. There's profound financial wisdom embedded in this example, the recognition that true wealth isn't measured by what we can control or accumulate, but by the meaning and purpose we discover in every circumstance. This approach to prayer and sleep also offers valuable insights for managing stress-related health conditions. Medical research confirms that chronic stress contributes to numerous health problems, from hypertension to autoimmune disorders. The practice of surrendering our concerns in prayer before sleep helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode that counterbalances the fight or flight stress response. It's fascinating to note that modern sleep science has confirmed what spiritual traditions have long practiced. Creating a consistent pre-sleep ritual, like evening prayer, signals to the body and mind that it's safe to transition into rest. The rhythm of familiar prayers, whether the rosary that John Paul II so loved or other devotions, creates a natural bridge between the activities of the day and the surrender of sleep. John Paul II often spoke about the theology of the body, his profound teaching that our physical existence is not separate from our spiritual nature, but integrally connected to it. This understanding illuminates why the transition from prayer to sleep holds such spiritual significance. In sleep, we engage in the most profound act of bodily surrender, releasing conscious control and trusting that our breathing, heartbeat, and countless other physiological processes will continue without our supervision. When we allow prayer to be the bridge that carries us into this state of surrender, we're living out the truth that our bodies themselves are meant to be expressions of prayer. The body, in fact, and only the body, the Pope wrote, is capable of making visible what is invisible, the spiritual and the divine. When we fall asleep in prayer, our bodies become living icons of trust, physically embodying the spiritual reality of surrender to God. There's a beautiful connection here to how John Paul II approached financial matters as well. Throughout his papacy, he emphasized the principle of solidarity, the recognition that we are all interconnected, all part of the same human family. This principle applies not just to our spiritual lives, but to our economic relationships as well. Just as we trust that we're held in God's care while we sleep, we're called to create economic systems that ensure everyone's basic needs are met. This doesn't mean abandoning personal responsibility or prudent financial management. Rather, it suggests that after we've done our part, working diligently, living within our means, saving for the future, and sharing generously, we can release the anxious grip of worry, trusting that we're part of a larger economy of grace. John Paul II consistently taught that the economy exists to serve human beings, not the other way around. When we understand this proper order, we can approach our financial lives with greater freedom and peace. Consider for a moment how this perspective might transform your approach to retirement planning. Instead of being driven by fear of scarcity or the anxious need to control all variables, you might blend prudent preparation with trustful surrender, knowing that your value and security ultimately come not from your financial assets, but from your identity as a beloved child of God. This balanced approach leads naturally to wiser financial decisions, as you're neither recklessly neglecting reasonable preparation nor obsessively hoarding out of fear. This wisdom is particularly relevant for those in their later years. As we age, we inevitably encounter the reality that we cannot control everything. Our health may become more unpredictable, our energy more limited. John Paul II demonstrated how to navigate this stage of life with dignity and grace. Even as his physical capabilities declined in his final years, the Pope maintained an attitude of peaceful surrender, neither denying his limitations nor being defined by them. His example offers profound guidance for how we might approach the financial dimensions of aging. Rather than clinging desperately to independence at all costs or surrendering all agency unnecessarily early, we can look for a middle path that honors both prudent planning and graceful acceptance of help when needed. This balanced approach aligns perfectly with the practice of falling asleep in prayer. We do what we can, then trustingly release the rest. The connection between prayer, sleep, and health goes even deeper. Medical research has established that quality sleep is essential for immune function, cognitive health, emotional regulation, and numerous other aspects of well-being. When we embrace the spiritual practice of transitioning from prayer to sleep, we're simultaneously engaging in one of the most powerful health practices available to us. John Paul II was known for his rigorous schedule and remarkable energy despite his advancing years. Part of his secret was this integration of prayer and rest. He understood intuitively what science now confirms, that true wellness emerges from rhythm and balance, not from constant activity. By embracing both contemplative prayer and restorative sleep as complementary aspects of a holistic spiritual practice, he modeled a path to integrated well-being. This understanding has particular relevance for addressing the epidemic of sleep disorders in our modern world. Many people struggle with insomnia, often due to racing thoughts and anxiety that prevent the natural transition into sleep. The practice of evening prayer creates a gentle bridge between wakefulness and sleep, helping to quiet the mind and calm the nervous system. Rather than reaching immediately for medication, many might find that reviving this ancient spiritual practice offers a more holistic path to better sleep. There's a striking parallel here to how many approach financial challenges. Just as people often seek quick pharmaceutical fixes for sleep issues rather than addressing the underlying patterns that prevent natural rest, many look for financial shortcuts instead of developing the foundational habits and attitudes that lead to true prosperity. John Paul II's integrated wisdom invites us to address both areas with greater patience and depth. The Pope frequently emphasized the virtue of temperance, the balanced moderation that allows us to use material goods appropriately without becoming enslaved to them. This virtue applies equally to our approach to sleep and rest. Neither workaholism that sacrifices necessary rest nor laziness that avoids meaningful labor reflects a truly integrated spiritual life. The practice of falling asleep in prayer beautifully embodies this balanced approach, honoring both the value of devotion and the necessity of rest. I'm reminded of a story about a monastery where John Paul II once stayed as a younger priest. The monks had a custom of concluding their day with the ancient prayer known as the Compline, which includes the line, "Protect us, Lord, as we stay awake. Watch over us as we sleep, that awake we may keep watch with Christ, and asleep, rest in his peace." After praying this, the community would process silently to their cells, maintaining silence until morning prayers. This liturgical practice acknowledges the spiritual continuity between wakefulness and sleep, seeing both as sacred states held within divine presence. This perspective offers wisdom for how we might structure our own days. Many spiritual traditions recommend bookending the day with prayer, beginning and ending in conscious communion with the divine. When the final moments before sleep are spent in prayer, we're more likely to carry that consciousness of divine presence into our dreams and to awaken with a greater sense of being held in love. There's a financial parallel worth noting here as well. Financial advisors often recommend bookending our financial lives with regular practices, beginning the month with intentional budgeting and ending with thoughtful review. When we bring a prayerful, contemplative approach to these practices, they become not just practical exercises, but expressions of our deeper values and commitments. John Paul II understood the importance of such rhythms and rituals. Throughout his life, from his early years as a factory worker during the Nazi occupation of Poland to his time as the leader of the global Catholic Church, he maintained disciplines of prayer that anchored his days and gave meaning to all his activities. His ability to transition peacefully from prayer to sleep reflected his larger capacity to move between contemplation and action, between receiving and giving, between silence and proclamation. This capacity for balanced transition is equally valuable in our approach to financial well-being. Many struggle with either excessive anxiety about money, unable to rest from financial worries, or with problematic avoidance, unwilling to engage actively with necessary financial planning. The wisdom of prayerful surrender before sleep offers a model for a more integrated approach, neither anxious nor avoidant, but engaged and then released. As we age, this wisdom becomes even more precious. Many older adults find that their sleep patterns change with more frequent awakenings during the night. Rather than seeing these as problems to be eliminated, John Paul II's example invites us to view these natural transitions as opportunities for renewed connection with the divine. The ancient monastic practice of vigils, prayers during the night watches, acknowledges that these periods of wakefulness can themselves become sacred time. Similarly, the financial transitions of later life, moving from active earning to living on retirement income, for example, need not be viewed with dread, but can be approached as opportunities for deepening trust and discovering new forms of abundance. Just as we can learn to move gracefully between wakefulness and sleep, prayer and rest, we can develop the capacity to navigate financial transitions with dignity and peace. There's a beautiful Hebrew word, menucha, that appears in the Psalms. It's often translated simply as rest, but it carries deeper connotations of tranquility, security, and well-being. When the psalmist writes, "The Lord is my shepherd, He makes me lie down in green pastures," this is the quality of rest being described, not mere cessation of activity, but positive fulfillment and peace. This is precisely the quality of rest that John Paul II identified in the experience of falling asleep during prayer. This understanding transforms how we approach both our spiritual practices and our physical need for sleep. Rather than seeing them as competing demands, prayer taking time away from needed rest or sleepiness interrupting proper prayer, we can recognize their profound compatibility. The surrender of consciousness in sleep can itself be a form of prayer, a lived embodiment of the trust that is at the heart of faith. Similarly, this perspective transforms how we might approach the financial dimensions of our lives. Rather than seeing financial responsibility and spiritual surrender as opposing forces, we can recognize their complementarity. Prudent planning and trustful release work together just as prayer and sleep do. After we've done what wisdom requires in terms of earning, saving, and giving, we can release our attachment to outcomes, trusting that we're held within a larger economy of grace. John Paul II exemplified this integrated approach throughout his life, and especially in his later years. As his health declined, he neither clung desperately to the appearance of strength nor abandoned his responsibilities prematurely. Instead, he found a middle path that honored both his limitations and his continuing call to serve. This example offers profound guidance for navigating the later stages of life, including the financial dimensions of retirement and legacy planning. The practice of falling asleep in prayer also offers wisdom for addressing the epidemic of anxiety in our culture. Many people struggle with persistent worry about the future, whether related to health concerns, financial insecurity, or other uncertainties. These worries often intensify at night, preventing restful sleep and creating a vicious cycle of exhaustion and increased anxiety. By embracing the spiritual practice of surrendering to prayer and then to sleep, we interrupt this cycle. We acknowledge our concerns, but place them within the larger context of divine care. This isn't about denying legitimate needs for planning and preparation. Rather, it's about recognizing the limits of our control and the reality of our dependence. As John Paul II often reminded us, we are not self-created beings. Our very existence is a gift, held within a larger love. This understanding has profound implications for financial anxiety as well. After we've taken reasonable steps to manage our resources wisely, there comes a point where continued worry serves no productive purpose. The practice of releasing our financial concerns in prayer before sleep helps us develop the capacity for appropriate trust, neither naive abandonment of responsibility nor anxious over-control. As we conclude our exploration of what it means to fall asleep while praying, I invite you to consider how this simple yet profound practice might transform your own approach to prayer, to rest, and even to your financial life. Perhaps tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you might allow your final waking moments to be a time of gentle prayer, not striving for perfect attention, but simply resting in divine presence, allowing yourself to be held as you transition into sleep. Remember the words of John Paul II, falling asleep in the arms of God is one of the most beautiful ways to rest. This isn't a failure of devotion, but its fulfillment, the ultimate expression of the trust that is at the heart of faith. In a world that often values constant productivity and control above all else, there is revolutionary wisdom in this simple surrender. I hope this exploration has offered you a new perspective on an experience many of us have had, but few have recognized as the gift it truly is. If this message has touched you, please share it with someone who might need this liberating truth. And remember, the next time you find yourself drifting off during prayer, don't be discouraged. You're not failing at prayer, you're succeeding at trust.